Okay, so again, hello everyone. Thank you for joining our first tutorial about template development kit for Data Stewardship Wizard. I'm Mark Sukanek, some of you may already know me, and I'm part of the DSW development team. First, just some organizational details. This tutorial is about a very fresh tool that we released just a few weeks ago, so any feedback and remarks can highly affect how we will enhance it in the future. So we will be very grateful for that. You can find some additional information about this tutorial in the document. I created a shorter link here. There is also an attendance list. Please fill in your name and application, and optionally also email address if you want to then get a link to the recording. And if you have any questions or remarks during the tutorial, you can write it in the chat or even in the document, which is better as a suggestion, and I will go through them afterwards so we can keep on schedule during this tutorial. Great. So first I want to quickly explain how templates work in Data Stewardship Wizard. You probably know that there is something called knowledge model that describes the structure and related things for creating questionnaires. It's depicted here on the left side, and you can have some hierarchy of those knowledge models. And basically it defines chapters, questions, possible answers, integrations, references, etc. And you can have several versions and evolve it over time. And users can create questionnaires using those knowledge models, so like instances, and fill actually the questionnaire with their replies. Each reply has specific type based on the type of question. So we have value questions and value replies, options, lists, and integration questions. I will show that afterwards. Then users, when they have filled questionnaire, can produce a document from it. And that is where the templates are used. And template specifies how are the replies from the questionnaire transformed into the document, into some text file, for example, HTML, but it can be any other textual format, for example, Markdown, JSON, RDF, whatever you can think of. So this is depicted here. That is useful, for example, when you want to provide the same information in various format, you can do it in one template. So you encode the replies in one way, but in multiple formats, for example, in JSON to be machine actionable, but also in HTML or Markdown to be human readable. So it provides this flexibility. Template can be tied to a certain knowledge model, but does not have to. For example, we have a questionnaire report template that is generic, and in other words, it can be used with any knowledge model. It does not make any assumptions. What are the questions there? What are the types? It basically works with any structure that you can make in the knowledge model. So it's generic, it's for any questionnaire, any knowledge model. But then you can have some templates that are specific to some knowledge model that take some assumptions. What are the questions there? What are the semantics of those questions? And somehow handles them in own way, as I will show you today. And for example, we have machine actionable DMP template, which works only with our knowledge model for data stewardship. So it takes some questions, for example, about data sets, and puts them into the JSON of the common standard for describing data sets, but it does not do it with every question that is in the questionnaire. So those are specific templates. Okay, before I start actually showing the template development, I want to show you that I have prepared my local instance of Data Stewardship Wizard. And I have it locally, and I have a simple knowledge model there for resume. And person can create a questionnaire and actually fill own resume in simplified form. So for example, here I have a questionnaire where I fill my information, for example, first name, last name, email, home address, gender, and then also some skills and languages that I can use. So this is basic example. It's very simple for our today's work. Also, I have here the knowledge model prepared when I want to investigate this knowledge model. Currently, I have here only one template, the generic one, questionnaire report. So when I want to use it, I can create a document directly here in Documents tab. I can use the template and create, for example, PDF file. And I download it and open it. It's the generic form that you may already know. I will open it in the same browser. It looks like this. But lately we have a new feature for preview, so I can here select a default template and pick whatever format I want, and then I can directly see it in the wizard. So it's very useful also for the template development. When I will update the template, I can use the preview. Here it is important to say that the preview is generated only when you change something in the questionnaire, because it uses a hash of all the replies. So if you want to actually reload the preview, you need to change something in the questionnaire, but I will do that. Also notice that I'm here logged as Albert Einstein, which is the default user account for administrator when you start your local instance, because I will use it for the template development as well. Now that I have the instance of DSW where I can test my new templates, I can proceed to the template development itself. And I will use the template development kit. And there are some requirements. This tool is written in Python, but it is also usable with Docker. And you need to always have the matching version of this tool with your instance of DSW Wizard. So it always works with its API. So this is something that you need to pay attention to when you work with, for example, some older versions of DSW. It is also required to have some basic technical knowledge, how to use some command line tools. Then you need to know how to work with Jinja templates to actually make the templates. As I will show you today, it's quite easy. It's some like low-level programming, so it's not something special. If you have ever seen some code in Python or some other language, it will be very similar. And it's also optional, but it's like good to have some experience with Git. So when you develop some template, you can publish it on GitHub and you can collaborate with others and make versions and branches. Okay, so let's start with the installation. I will directly show it in my terminal. And I will start with virtual environment. I'm not sure if you know about it, but it's some like sandbox for Python applications. So you can create virtual environment and install some things into this environment, and it won't affect any system-wide configuration or packages. So I will activate it in my terminal, and now I can easily install the template development kit because it's standard Python package that is published on Python package index. So when I take a look here, I can see the instructions and I can easily copy this installation command and install the package. And now I can use it directly as a command line tool. I can see that I have this version. I can also check some help instructions and then use it. Of course, if you work with the virtual environments, which is like recommended, when you deactivate it, it is no longer there for you.
Excuse me, we see web browser on the terminal.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That's strange. Yeah. Thank you for telling me that. Yeah. So this, you should see my terminal.
Yes, it works now.
Okay, thanks. So I will show you again. So in Python, I can create virtual environments for separating the dependencies. I can activate it, but it's like optional for you. And then I can install in this environment the template development kit. So when I use this command that is in the Python package index, it will install it into my environment, and then I can use it to see, for example, the version or to get help instructions. I see that there are some subcommands of this tool. So I can, for example, take a look what list does. It again has help for each of those commands like this. If I do not want to use Python, but I can use Docker on my computer, I can do the same with Docker because we provide this tool also as a Docker image. And it is published on Docker Hub, so you can use this image and use it directly as a command line tool, as I showed you above. Yeah, also Wizard. Yeah, so it works the same way as the command line tool for Python, but I think that installation of Python is much more simple than working with Docker. So I will use the Python for this session. Okay, back to the slide. That was the installation, also using Docker. And now we will try to work somehow with the instance that I have prepared. So we will start by listing the templates that are already available there. So I will use the list command. And if I take a look again, it will require some API URL, username, which is email, and password, and optionally also some output format. But let's try it without any. And now it asks me to fill those because it requires to have those three information. So what is the API server? If I take a look in my instance, it is not the URL of this like Wizard client, but in the help and about, I can find out what is the API URL, and it is this one. There is even a link to the API documentation if you want to use API in other way. So I will copy this and go back to the terminal. Then I have the Albert Einstein, as I told you. And the password is password, but you cannot see as I type it because it's like secret, so it's hidden. And now I see here that there is one template with this ID and with this name. What is also possible is to affect how the output looks like. I can see that here are some information messages, but if I don't want to see them, I can use quiet mode. But I now have to enter those again. So you may say that it is quite bothersome to always enter the same information. It's true, but I can use environment variables. So if I do it like this, and okay, I should have done that. If I do it like this, and also for the username and password, now you will see my password, which is the default one, because it's just local instance, so it does not matter. But now I can use it even without entering them again, because it will get those information from the environment variables, and I can use it multiple times, and it will always take them from that. But of course, if I close this terminal and open new one, I will need to again set those variables. So for that, we use again a pretty standard thing, which is called .env file. So if I create here new file, which is called .env, I can put the environment variables inside. I have prepared them, so I can copy it, so I don't have to write it again, like this. It will then load them from this. So I can show you that if I open new terminal and activate again the environment, it uses the .env file, but there is no variable directly in the environment. Of course, it uses it now because I'm currently in the folder where the file is. But if I, for example, go to other, it does not get those, because if I again look at the help, I see that you can provide here path to that file, but the default is in the local directory .env file. So now I could use it in this way. Okay, so back to the quiet mode. If I don't want to see the info messages, I can use quiet mode. If I, on the other hand, want to see more, I can use the debug mode. But in this case, there are no debug messages, just timestamps. But for the other commands, there might be some debug messages that can help you, for example, if you find some problems or want to know what is happening on the back. Again, those are described in the help of this tool. Okay, so that was just how to work and connect the template development kit to some instance. But now let's create finally a new template. So for that, if you catch that in the help, there is again a command that is called new, create a new DSW template project. So that's what I want to do. But let's take a look what it actually does. Here I can see that it requires, or it is optional, to specify template directory where I want to have my project. And I can also use force if there are some matching files that might be overwritten they will be. So if I don't use force, it will skip them, but if I use force, it will override them. But I have pretty empty folder, so it does not matter to me, but I want to use this folder for this new project. I don't want it to create a new one, so I will put this folder. This launches some interactive wizard that asks me for details or metadata about the template, so I will fill it. For the name, I will put there resume example template. Now it asks for some organization ID. That is something that you should have registered in our registry, but for me, I work with DSW team, so for me it is DSW. Here you can see that it automatically suggests here the template ID based on what I entered in the first question, so I can use it. Here again, some version. It even handles if you enter something incorrect. So now I see that it really must be some semantic version. So let's keep it as it is. Now I can write some description. So on, license, and now I can add formats. As I explained at the beginning of this tutorial, each template can have multiple formats. For example, HTML, RDF, etc. But for now, we will have just one, and it will be HTML. And later on, we will add some more. So it asks for format name, how the format should be visible in the wizard. What should the user see when they select the template and then the format? What will be the file extension? It is used when you compose the file name in the wizard. Then some other metadata, content type, and finally some template file where like it will be present in the file system. Okay, now it asks if I want to add another. I will select now no. Okay, it writes me that I created some new project, and I can take a look what it created. It created here a README file, template JSON, and some source folder. It is basically what I entered here. So let's take a look also in some text editor. I will use Visual Studio Code, but it's really up to you what you are most comfortable with. And we have the README, which is some pre-generated README from the text that I entered in the interactive wizard. So here is like some changelog info about license and the description. Then there is template.json file, which is the most important template file that is there because it describes actually all the metadata and also the formats. Here I have one format that I just entered. And if I take a look, it added here some steps. To tell the wizard how it should produce the document in this format, it always consists of some steps, how to produce it. There are some types, some names of those steps. In actual version, there are 4: Jinja, which uses some Jinja template and renders it into the document. Or there is a pandoc step that can transform some document from one format to other. I will show that later on. Similar is other for PDF files. And there is also one that is called JSON, and it basically just dumps the document context into JSON. But we will today work mainly with Jinja. And then finally, here is some configuration for the template development kit. So here is the version information that shows what I used. Then there is what is the README file. Basically, you can use also other file name for README file, but this is the default one. And then there is a list of files that are considered as template files. For now, I have just this one. I don't have any other, for example, images or some other assets. So I will use just this one file. But you can here use the standard patterns that you may know from git ignore. So something like that would also work. Yeah, so something like that or something like this. If you want to, in the future, add some more files. But I will have just one for now. And in the beginning, there are some basic metadata that I entered. Also, there is meta model version, which is now currently 2 for data Stewardship Wizard. So it is something that describes the structure of this file. Then there's recommended package ID, which is basically ID of the knowledge model that I want to use to it. So if I take a look in the wizard, I want to build now the specific template, not the generic one, as I explained at the beginning. So I will use this ID. And here I have allowed packages, and this basically describes with what knowledge models it is usable. But my template will be usable only with those questionnaires from this knowledge model. So, and it will be since this version till any higher version. You can have more if you, for example, have some customizations, but that's not my case today, so I will have just this one. Okay, and the last thing is the Jinja template. And here it should be some HTML file, but this is just some skeleton where I can start to work. But let's try to do something here. Some basic HTML. It's also always good to specify encoding in HTML files. And to actually see something, we need some content. Let's put the test for now. Okay, so now is the question if it actually works, and we can try it. We will use again the template development kit, but another command. In this case, it will be the put command that uploads the template to DSW. So let's try it. It used the information that I have in the .env file, so I don't have to fill it again. And it succeeded by putting this template into my instance. So let's check it. And actually it is here. In templates I can see it. And if I go to my questionnaire, I can set it here as a default template. I see here the single format that I configured, which is the HTML. And now in the preview, I can see the test. So it actually works. And this is quite useless, right? Because you have just some static text here. So let's try something that actually uses the replies from the questionnaire. To do that, you need to. Yeah. Do you have some?
I have a short question.
Mm-hmm.
What other formats are supported except for HTML, and what's the use for them? It's useful for machine actions like JSON or something like that, or?
Yeah. When you create your own template, you can add here any other format that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So it can produce basically anything, but if you want to use Jinja, you can produce only text files. So any text file, which is RDF, JSON, basically anything that you can open in text editor, it's not binary file, so we can produce it here. So it's not limited to any format. I just want to show here the HTML because it's like the most common when you want to produce something that is human readable. But in the same way, I could use, for example,
what I was interested in is use case for something else than HTML. Do you have something in your mind? Some example of something where something else than HTML can be useful?
Yeah, for example, for the machine XML DMP template that I mentioned at the beginning, it is available on GitHub, so you can take a look. And it's basically what I'm showing you here, but it uses JSON format. And also some RDF formats, turtle, and then it can translate the turtle to some other formats as well. So it uses machine actionable things.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for the question. And let's continue. Yeah, so we need to take a look at something that is called document context. What you could do is to go to the documentation of the wizard, and it is described here in the document context. But what you can also do is to directly print it out in our template if we don't want to go outside of our development. So for that, I can see that here the skeleton contained already something, and I can see that here is some CTX variable, and that's the document context. So let's investigate that. For that, Jinja offers me filter to JSON, so it can nicely print out the JSON object. And I use pre to see it nicely in HTML. Now I would again need to use this command to update the template in the wizard. But if I take a look again in the help, I can see that it has watch mode, which is something that you may know from other tools. And when I use it, it starts and enters watching mode. And whenever I change some file that is matching the patterns here, it will automatically update those files in the DSW instance. So if I, for example, write something here and save the file, it detected the change and updated the file in the wizard. So I can let it open on background and develop, and I don't have to worry about uploading it again. So now back to the wizard. As I told you, the preview is regenerated only when I change some answer. So something like this. And now I can see the document context here. I'm not sure if it's big enough. So what is in there? There is some configuration information, which can you use in the template. So for example, the link to the actual wizard instance. In my case, it's the localhost. Then there is some timestamp when the document was created. So when the user pressed here the create button, or when it started to regenerate the preview. Then who initiated the creation of this document? So here it is Albert Einstein because it's the user that I use, and some information about that user. Then there is information about the knowledge model that is used for the template, for the questionnaire. So here I have list of chapter UIDs, and then I have dictionary of all entities that are in the knowledge model, which is typed. There are answers, possible chapters, experts, integrations, questions, etc. So everything that is in the knowledge model is captured here in this maps. objects. I have also the name of this knowledge model and UID. Then I can see some information about levels and metrics, but this is related now currently like very tightly only with the data stewardship, and it's not like interesting for my knowledge model that I use now, so I can skip those. Then there is some organization that is configured for this instance. Then there is information about the package, which is like metadata about the knowledge model. So I here see the ID of the knowledge model that is used for this questionnaire version, etc. Then there is the name of the questionnaire. So it is this one. Then finally, I have here questionnaire replies, which is map, where I have some UID path separated by dots, and then the value is always object with actual reply. So I can see that, for example, here to some question, I put their string reply with this string. This is the actual reply that the user entered. And the question is defined using this path. I will show you then how to actually pair it with some question. Then there is UID of the questionnaire, then some report. Basically, it shows how many questions are answered and unanswered for each chapter or for total questionnaire. And then finally, there is also updated timestamp for the document and UID of this very single document. So this is something that is provided to the template, and it can be used to generate actually the document. So let's use it. I will keep it there because I will still develop and I may need to look at the context. But now I want to do something, for example, with the first two questions from the questionnaire, which is first name and last name. To work with those in the template, I need the identifiers of those questions, which I can find in the knowledge model editor. So if I find those two questions, I can see that here is ID and also ID of the chapter that the questions are in. So I need to copy those and have them in the template. It is good practice to use them as new variables. So I can define variables like this also for the questions. You should use some like rules how to name your variables, and it is very good to be consistent in it when you have, for example, some more complex template and with various files, so you don't get lost in it. And also for the last name. So now I have these three UIDs, and now I want to get replies to those questions. And I've seen that there in the document context, it was some path that was joined by dots. So I could do that manually, but we provide again a filter for that. So when I want to compose the path, for example, for the first name question, I can use list. It's a very basic concept of list, and I need to join the chapter and UID of the first question, and I can use filter reply path, and it will automatically join those UIDs with the separator correctly. And I can do the same for last name. So I have the path, and now I want to actually get the reply. So what I entered, that I entered Marek as first name and Suchanek as last name. So again, I will use variables for that. And now I can use here replies map, which is the questionnaire replies synonym, because I will use it often. It is good practice to have some shorter name for that. And it is also part of the skeleton that is generated for me. Now it's a map, so I can here use the path to access the reply. So like this. And I expect that this will be some string reply, so some textual answer. So again, for this, there is a filter provided that I want to get the string value from this reply. And again, the same thing for last name. So now I should be able to get first name and last name. So instead of this dummy text, dummy heading, I can use the variables actually, and to print them out, it uses those double brackets, as I already showed you with the context, which is the basic syntax of Jinja. Okay, so this should work. Let's try it. I can check that it again in the watch mode checked the changes, so I don't have to worry about that. I just need to here change some answer. And I see that now the title is using the name that is entered here. If I change it, it changes also in the template. But what happens when I keep them empty? It looks weird, right? So when you do something like that, like something like this, it is usually good to have there some condition where you check if there are actually some answers. In the Python, it is quite natural that you have any variable and it can be turned into like Boolean, true or false. In this case, those are potentially strings, and it will check if the string is empty or not by default. So this condition says if first name or last name is not empty, so at least one of them. And if both are empty, I can write something else. For example, something like this. I can use some indentation to have it visually nice. Let's see. I have to change something here again. I have now anonymous person because those are both empty. If I fill here Marek, it's the resume of Marek. If I fill here Suchanek, it works with Suchanek, and if I fill both, there is both. So that's how it works with simple value replies. If I take a look in the editor, I can see that those are the value of questions with string type. It works exactly the same with all the other. Just here for number, you don't usually want to have string value. So instead of this, you will write that you want to get int value. If you want to, for example, count something or make some sum or product of some numbers. But if you want to use it as a string value, you can write here string. Okay, and let's go through some other question. For example, gender, which is options question. So it has some possible answers that are listed here. And for that, we again need the UID of this question, which is this one. Notice that when I click this like button, it copies to the clipboard, and you can then easily paste it in the template. So that's quite useful. So again, gender UID is this one, and I need to have the path. And now that I have the path, I can get the reply. Let's keep it like this for now, and we can here write something about the gender of the person. If it is filled, then we will write some string. Gender person is gender. Like this, for example. And again, I will go back to the questionnaire, change something. And it writes here some UID. Although I have here filled that I'm male. This UID, CD65, is actually UID of that option that I selected. So if I go here to male, I can see that this is CD65. Now there are two options that you can do with such thing. First is that you will use in the template the information about knowledge model. So I can do something like this. And from the knowledge model, there is the dictionary of entities, which has answers. And for the answers, if you don't believe me, I can show you it here again. There are chapters, but also here answers. Knowledge model, entities, answers. And if I take a look, here should be somewhere male. And here I have the UID, so this is the CD65. So I can use this UID here to actually get the answer. So I will get this object, and from this object I can use the label. So now, instead of printing out this UID, I can print the label of it. I have to change something again. So I here have now male. If I change to female, it works because it gets another answer object. If I put other, it is other. So that's the first option that you could do. The other is, yeah.
Okay, please continue. I don't want to interrupt your
okay.
idea.
The other option that you could do is to copy those UIDs from the knowledge model that I showed you, the CD65, and also for the other two options. I have it prepared, so I will just copy paste it here. And now what you can do is to compare instead of this. You can compare what is the actual answer. So you can have something like this. And it is useful when you want to write something else that is in the label. And I can do it for the other two options as well. And now I can write something on my own when the person is male. So for example, he is a man. She is a woman. Or it uses a different gender. But we have also the option when the question is unanswered. So we can have also else branch. And for example, write something like this. Notice here that here is elif, and it's basically else if, but it is same as in Python again. So if you are familiar with Python, it's the same. Okay, let's try this. And I have to change something again. It uses a different gender. Here's a man. Okay, so it seems to work. What is also good with this approach that you can easily go with the nested questions, because when I use here other, I can fill something here, and I want to see this answer as well if the other is checked. So I can use here nested expressions. So I can again access this question. I would again copy the UID of that question and put it here. I have it prepared so we can make it faster. Here, notice that for the path, I am like deeper in the knowledge model. So I here use the gender path, which is this one. Then I have the answer UID for the other gender. And then I have the question UID for the question where I can specify what is the gender. So first the chapter, then this question, 7th, then other option, C, and then this question. So it will be composed of all those UIDs. But I can here easily reuse this path. So I can join them again with the reply path.
Excuse me, maybe I missed something. Where are defined these questions and answers? I mean the structure of the template.
This structure of this like questionnaire is the knowledge model, and I can create it or edit it in the knowledge model editor, which I can see here. And here is the structure. So here I have the gender question with this UID, and here I have the nested question for the with gender array.
And the editor is the only way how to prepare it, or is it something like JSON file that I can edit in my preferred text editor?
Yeah, it is the most convenient way to do it directly in the wizard, in the editor. But what you could do is to download here the JSON file. It is called KM. It is called KM, but it is basically a JSON file inside. But the structure is not directly as it is here. It's composed of events, and it's more complicated. So basically, it is better to do it here.
Okay, so it's the web editor is the preferred way. Okay, thanks.
No problem. Okay, so I now have this question in the template prepared. So now when the user selects here other, I can print what gender it uses. So for example, like this. Go back here and test it out. So I can see that I see here the answer. So that's how it works with nested questions. You can, in the wizard, you can define nested questions in theoretically unlimited level. So this is the way how can you do access those answers and questions. So with this, I covered option questions and value questions. So let's move to the next type. And those are the list questions. We have some list questions in skills chapter. And here's question technical skills. And it is list of items. So when I take a look again in the questionnaire, in skills, I have here technical skills with some already filled values. I can add some more or delete some existing. So this is how list works. And I want to print out those in HTML, preferably as some bullet list, right? So again, I need the UIDs of here the skills chapter and technical skills question, and then also skill name question. So I already prepared those again, so we can make it more efficient. I will separate it here. You can in Jinja write commands using these delimiters. So I can use it like this, for example. So I have the UID of skills chapter of skills questions, which is the list question, and then the name for each of those items. Then I have here the path again for the skills question, which is the list question. And then I get the skills. It will return a list of items. So I use here the filter reply items, as I used here reply string value, I use instead this. And we can take a look what it actually returns. So for this, I will here have something like this, skills. And let's take a look what it actually has inside. We can use again the JSON filter to print it out nicely. And if I go back here, I see that the list is list of UIDs, because here each of those items, this 1A1, 1B1, 1C1, those are all items that are identified internally with UID. So I will use those UIDs in paths to access the reply. So what I will do is to iterate through this list and print out then the skill name. So for that, I will use for loop. It is again the same as in Python, so it works like this. Now I need to compose the path for this specific item here. Which will be some reply path. And now here I reuse this path of this list question. Then I use the UID of this one item. And then for this item, I want to know the skill name. So like this. This is path to the question, for example, this one. For first iteration, for second iteration, this one, for third, this one, etc. And now I can, again, because it's value question, the skill name, I can get it as I did it for the last name and first name of the person. Again, it will be string value. And I told you that I want to do it as a bullet list. So I will do it like this. Bullet list in HTML. Well. So let's try. Again, I will change something here. Yeah, and now it's a bullet list of those 4 answers. Again, I told you earlier that it is better to check if there is actually some reply. I didn't do that now. So when I add here some empty skills, it will here create empty bullets. So it is one-to-one. If you want to avoid this, you would need to have here some condition again. Yeah, because it is undefined, it is case sensitive, as I can see, like this. Yeah, so the empty values are skipped in this case. So this is how you can work with list questions. When you have the UID of an item, you can then compose again the path to the nested questions in the item. So that is how it works. You can of course have list questions nested inside, so you then may have loops that are also nested, so for loop in some other for loop. Okay, we have also another list question here for the languages. And it is interesting in other way that here the language is integration question. So it uses an integration where are all the languages listed. So I can add here, for example, English. And it gives me some link to some definition of this language. In this case, it's some ISO shortcode. But it's here to show the last type of question, how to work with it, and it's integration question. So to do this, I need to again create the listing for languages. I have it again prepared, so I can just copy paste it here. Because otherwise I would repeat the same thing again, copy those UIDs from the knowledge model editor and get list of languages. And now we can take a look what is actually in the languages list. And here I get the reply to this question. I don't use here the filter as I did for the scales because I want to investigate this object. And if the object is there, I want to use it again with the toJSON filter so I can see what is inside to show it to. So should create a preview now. And I can see here for the languages that it is object that has a type, which is now always integration reply because it's integration question. But inside the value, there is not only the value, for example, Czech or English, but there is again an object where I have ID here with the code of the language, type is integration value, and value is Czech. It is like this because what I can do with integration question is that I can write here something else that is suggested by the integration. It's just like guidance, but it's not necessary to select it. So I can here write something else. It's valid, but then it's not integration value, but plain value. So based on that, you can check what was actually entered by the person. If you are not interested if it was from integration or entered by hand, you can basically here access the value. Yeah, here's value twice because this is first value and this is the second one, and it's for both cases, so it always works. So when I check it now, it works. But if I, for example, want to generate the URL that is visible also in the wizard, this one, or at least write down the shortcode of the language, which is the ID. I need to check it here. So I need to have here again condition if language reply value type is integration value, then I can access the ID also. But if it is not, I can access only the value because it does not have any ID. And so for check, I see here the language code, but for blah blah, I don't see it because it's not integration value. This is just a simple case. In some cases, the ID is itself some URL, so it can be used as link. But if I want to produce a link like this, it's actually defined, if I take a look in the editor, in the language integration as here item URL. So this says that it for each item generates a link where this ID is replaced with the code of language. So I could copy paste this by hand, but then if someone changes it in the knowledge model, I would need to change it also in the template. So it's the best if you access it directly, which is of course possible from the document context. Here I can see that the knowledge model has integrations, and in integrations under the UID of this integration, I have item URL, which is this, and I can replace this with the ID. So that's what I want to do. So for that, I need language question and language integration. So I will do it here. The language question from the knowledge model. I can easily access like this. I did it the same way for the single answer as I showed you for male, female, other. So I can do the same for question, entities, questions. And here I need to put the language UID. So each question has its UID. And then I will do something similar for the integration, but I will get integrations. And now I need UID of that integration. I could again copy that, but it is already in the knowledge model. The question has integration UID because I now know that this is integration question. And I can even again check it in here. This is the integration, and this is the question, the integration question, and here is integration UID. So I can access it like this. And now I have the integration question, which has the item URL. So here I can create a link. By simply accessing the item URL and using standard filter from Jinja, which you could find in the documentation of Jinja, and it's called replace. And I will replace this placeholder for ID with the actual ID. Now this is the URL for this language, and I can here create a link instead of printing out here the ID. Link. close the link. So this should produce clickable link to that URL that is specified by the integration. So I can again check that. And I can see that it is actually really a link. And if I click it, it works as it does from the questionnaire. I could, like this, compose also some other links. So it does not actually matter what I could do with this. So that was the integration question. And with this, we basically covered all of the types of questions that are possible to do with the data stewardship wizard. You can nest them in the indefinite way. For the list questions, you can have theoretically indefinite number of items. So it's like not limited for both depth and width in this sense. So that is basically how can you work on some specific template for some specific knowledge model. But you may also want to build some generic template, like is the questionnaire template for any knowledge model. For that, you would work more with the knowledge model that is in the document context, because you would need to check what are the types of questions, what you can do with them, if there are some nested questions, and print them out. I will just quickly show you here how it could start. We can list all the chapters, and for each chapter list the root questions, just to give you an idea how it could work. So we will do it again as list, but we can use, for example, numbered list. And now in the document context, we have chapter UIDs. So we can iterate through them. Now with the chapter UID, I can get the chapter. And I can, for example, print out the title of that chapter. Again, I could check in the document context what field it does have, but it's named the same way as it is in the knowledge model editor. So title, you can see here that for the chapter it is title. And so I expect it to have this. I could also print the text, and then it has question UIDs. So now I can create a nested list of the questions. Again, some loop. And now I will, in the same way again as it was here for chapters, I will access the question. And I can print out here again question title. Is that here in this fragment I didn't use any hard-coded UID, so it's generic for any knowledge model. To show you how it works, I here have the chapter basic information with those questions and skills with those questions. So it actually works. Now it just gives something like information. It could be used, for example, as table of contents or something like that. But to give it some sense, I can, for example, check if those questions are answered, if they have some reply. So I can check here if there is actually some reply. I don't need to make any assumption about its type. And here I can specify the reply path, which is here chapter UID and question UID. So here I will get reply to question that is identified by this chapter and this UID. And now I can easily here do something, for example, like this. If there is a reply, I can print something. To make it nice, I prepared here some emoji for like check and some cross. So let's see. I have here unanswered bio, and for example, I can delete the gender. And in skills, I will delete answers for languages and driver license, but I will have some answers for skills. So now I see that actually those are checked or crossed. So this is how you can build some generic template when you don't hard code any UID. You basically go through the knowledge model and investigate the entities in some way. Here for the question, I could check from the document context, if I take a look at questions, that it is question type, value type. In that case, print out the value. If it is option type, options question, I could do something more. For example, check what are the answers and which answer is picked and do something about that. For answer, which is here, if there is the one with other, there are follow-up UIDs. So this is UID of the nested question. So I could use it and again print some questions and do something like that. What you can do in the wizard, use again template development kit and use get command. So actually, if I again use list, I can use then get to download some template from the wizard instance. It downloads locally to a new folder based on the ID. And I can take a look how it, for example, looks in the generic template that we have. And we use here some macros because we need some recursion because the questions are nested, so we need recursion. We use macros. If you need to know more about them, it's in the Jinja documentation how it works. It's basically some reusable function that you can reuse for rendering, in this case HTML, but again, it works with any textual format. And then basically we use these macros like this. So we have some content when we go through the chapters, as I showed you, and render chapter. And in render chapter, we render some report, and then we render each question. And in question, it becomes more complex because we need to check then what are the types of questions, and based on that, render the type of question. Yeah, so you can easily download some template like this and investigate what is inside. Or as I showed you with the machine assembly MB, it is also on GitHub, so you can check it there as well. Okay, so now we produce only HTML with our template with Jinja. We could add some more. We could, for example, have here some RDF template, and here I would need to add in the source folder new template file and write the template for RDF. Here I should have something else. I'm not sure now how it is, if it's like this, or maybe application. I would need to check it out. But you would need to do that as another format. But what I want to do is to have another step in this format. So I will copy this. And now I want to produce also PDF file. And what Wizard can do for you is to translate or transform the HTML to PDF using some other tool. What I need to use here is some new UID for that. That is a good service. So I need to generate it by hand. And now I will use the HTML, but the HTML will not be the output format for PDF, but I will have another step which will turn the HTML to PDF. And this step is called like this. It uses this tool. You may already know, encountered it somewhere. And it does not have any options. It basically expects to get this HTML and it will produce PDF. So if we again put it there, it should be now visible in the wizard that I here have PDF now, and in the preview I can see the PDF file, or I can download it, or I can create here a new document with PDF or HTML. So this is how this step works. It translates this HTML to PDF, and similarly we can do something like this. Again, I need new UID. For other formats, for example, some MS Microsoft Word, which is and in this case, it's not this WK HTML to PDF transformation, but it uses pandoc. And for pandoc, it's quite universal. So you need to specify from which format, in this case from HTML, and to what format, in this case, .6. Again, if I update it here, I can see now MS Word. If I save it here as a default template and press preview, it of course does not have some engine to display the Word document directly in it. So I will download it and I can open it. And it looks like this. Yeah, so it's some automatic transformation. At the pandoc, I'm again not sure if you know the tool. If you take a look here, it can translate from various formats to even more formats. So you can specify any of those in the template. So for example, you can use your JSON, ODT, EPUB, and others. So that's also possible. And the same way I could do it here, create, and I will have it persistently here, not as a preview. Here you can see that here is a different icon for the questionnaire report. So we have here some different icons from different types. Those are font awesome icons, but if you again take a look at the downloaded questionnaire report, you can easily download, copy paste those icons, and it will change the icons in our our template as well. So if I take it from here, and you can see that here is, for example, for LaTeX. Here we have the Word document. Here it's for open document and others. So you can reuse those informations. Okay, so let's check it out. And now the icons are nicer. Okay, and now when you are like ready with your template, if you are happy with how it looks like, for example, you want to probably get rid of this document context printing, and you, for example, want to put there some footer, but let's not do that for now. And you are okay with how it looks like, you can release it. What you could do is, for example, have it as a Git repository, as I mentioned. So I could do something like this. You can copy the instructions. Then here I would make it a Git repository. I would link it with my repository. And then I could like do something with that. But here I definitely don't want to commit this template that I just investigated. And also never ever put in your repository the .env file when you have the password to your instance. So you should create a git ignore file where you put .env, and also the virtual environment if you use it for Python, and eventually other temporary files. So something like this for now. I could edit, commit it. Name it somehow. Then I could push it. Because I didn't put it there, I screwed up with the HTTPS remote instead of SSH, but I would push it, and I could also use corresponding git tag. You should always have tag that corresponds to the tag that you use in your template. So this version, and then you would push also this tag. So you can basically work with this as with any programming project. What the TDK also offers is command package. So if you don't want to publish it in some other way, you can create a package that produces some zip file. And this zip file you can send to someone to test it out, and the person can import it here. So I could here import this zip file, and it would create a template. I have the template here, so I don't have to do that. But in other instance of Stewardship Wizard. If I again get the questionnaire report, which is something that I want to do to show you the last command of the template development kit. If I go then to this template, what I can do with template development kit is to use the command verify to verify template project, and it does two things. It checks that the metadata are valid, And also, if those are valid, it will print out some information about the template in human readable way. So if you want to quickly check what the template is about and what are the formats there, you don't have to open it in editor and investigate the JSON, but it prints it out like this. If there is some problem, so if I, for example, here delete license, which is something that is mandatory, and use verify, it tells me that it's not valid because license is missing. Yeah, so this can be used. If something does not work, you can use verify. So basically that's it from the template development kit and how to create both knowledge model specific and generic templates. I went through those things with you, but we will provide the slides so you can even check them again. And that's it from my presentation. Thank you again for attending.